Okay, we should be live now. Let me... Hell? Okay. Let's, Hello, I'm Art Francisco.
And I'm Andrew G. Do you want to? Is this starting soon going to go away? This 10-minute.
We're on. We're live.
Okay.
This is the Marxist line.
Okay.
This is episode 67, and it's May 2nd.
Yeah. So today, it looks like we got a lot to cover. So yeah, we've got a few articles on Myanmar and the history of it and how it relates to today. Some stuff on May Day, and some more stuff on unions involving the recent attempt to unionize with Amazon, I believe, and yeah, and a couple other things. What do we have over at Theory and State of Movement, Art?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about the big platform with the that Lausan article on the big platform, and basically the drifting to the right from the Hong Kong movement. So anyway, the Myanmar stuff you were talking about, Andrew. And let me just switch over so we can bring this up. So this comes out of a group called Bolshevik EA, split from IBT in 2018. And I'm not sure if that's the full name, but I asked for the group's name, and the person that shared this article said that that's the group's name or the description of the group. So the IBT, I think, is the International Bolshevik Tendency, which is a Trotskyist group, and so this is a Korean splinter off of that. And we've covered like maybe a little bit of this stuff from this main IBT trend, but this is the first time we've ever seen anything from their Korean branch. And so this comrade from Korea wanted to share this article, and the article, like on Facebook, and the article was basically I couldn't open it, and so if I couldn't open it, I'm pretty sure others couldn't either, and it was flagged for virus and stuff from Norton 360. Which, you know, it could be just a matter of that it's from a different nation, like it's from a Korean based website. And so I suggested that they just reprint it onto Reddit. And so that's what they did. It's there's two different articles. They're basically the same thing. There's a shortened version, and then there's a 2-part larger version that's like 20 pages long.
So if you like banging your head against the desk, then go with a 20-page version.
Yeah, I recommend the shortened version to get the main points, but yeah, basically the 20-page version is mostly history, like for the first 19 pages.
Yeah.
So
I didn't realize I was banging my head against the desk for a while there, because I started off with a 20-page one. But I was yeah. There's history in there that I didn't know about, so that's good. It all wasn't banging the desk with my head.
Yeah. Well, so the first 19 pages are mostly, almost all history of Myanmar from the perspective of these Korean comrades in IBT splinter from 2018. But the last page kind of comes to their more of their summaries. And I'm gonna pull up my notes because I'll keep this here on the screen, but I'm gonna have to pull up my notes to kind of see exactly what I wanted to talk about with this. And okay, so so the last page or so, I would say I'm not sure if it's poor writing or poor translation or both, but it gets a little confusing to some of the stuff they're talking about. But one of the things they're talking about, it sounds like, is that there's some documents posted by some bourgeois publications called Min Plus and 427 Epoch. And so they dismiss some claims by these two groups. And I don't think those groups are in the Marxist community. I think they're bourgeois publications, but I'm not certain on that because it doesn't really give a good introduction to what Min Plus or 427 Epoch is. So we don't really, like, I would have to do some more homework to figure out what those publications are. If anybody that's out in the chat is familiar with those publications, feel free to let us know in the comments or in the chat, and because that'd be helpful for this conversation. And there's another group or two that they address, and that's the Workers' Revolutionary Party and the Revolutionary Community International Tendency, both of which I haven't heard of. And I don't know if those are Korean-based groups or where they're based out of. But they have some disagreements with those. And their disagreements with those two groups is that, and I'll quote this Korean article. RCIT and WRP still claim the U.S.-led regime change operations in Libya and Syria in 2011 and the subsequent civil war as a democratic revolution. Though through this Myanmar crisis, Syria is secretly reinstated. They almost always define American antagonists as imperialism or highlight their negative character and water the act of American imperialism with the logic that they're qualitatively same. It sounds to me like their main criticism is that these two groups, and I can't really say for sure because I haven't read the original statements or anything, and this criticism isn't crystal clear to me, but it sounds to me like their main criticism is that these two groups have basically said that what's going on in Libya and Syria is a democratic revolution, and that they don't criticize U.S. imperialism enough.
The groups don't?
What's that? The RCIT and WRP, which,
right.
And I have no idea what these groups are because I've never heard of them before. Like, I don't know if they're European based, if they're Asian based, I don't think they're US based because I've never heard of them in the United States. And so, and you gotta also keep in mind, I think this is also a translation. And so I don't even know if these two groups are even important, like how big they are or anything like that, like what their significance is. The other thing that's interesting is they go on further in criticizing these two groups, and it says that basically and it sounds like they're criticizing these two groups with this, and if those in Korea who are part of this article, if I'm interpreting it wrong, please feel free to post in the chat or the comments. But it sounds like these two groups that they're targeting or that they're criticizing say that are basically putting a lot of the blame on China and Russia, Chinese and Russian intervention in regards to Myanmar. And they're saying that this is the same thing as what happened in Libya and Syria. So I guess, and that these groups painted the Libyan and Syrian rebels as democratic fighters. And it says here, and I'm quoting the IBT Splinter Korean publication. What about Libya, where Gaddafi was overthrown? The democratic revolution was successful. It's gone to hell. Syria, which they claim is not an imperialist regime change, but a democratic revolution, it's hell. So of course, like, without knowing specifically what those two groups said, I can kind of take an educated guess. And that is that I think, well, I don't think it's accurate to call those like both democratic revolutions, though maybe at least in Syria, because it for one, a revolution implies that society will completely change, right? And so I do think that what was going on in Syria was an uprising. I'm hesitant to give it the term revolution, and this is really nitpicking and like like nitpicking words, really, that only people in the Marxist community, maybe the anarchist community, really give a shit about. It might not be that important, but I'm guessing that these groups had sympathy towards the uprisings, and that they criticized China and Russia for their involvement in Syria, and they didn't have a whole lot to say about the United States and Europe becoming involved, or maybe they did, but like Louis Proyect, who routinely says, "Hey, look, 90% of the casualties were from Russia, Assad's forces and Russian forces," which I think is true. So that's the, and then this group is, of course, sympathetic with Russia and China, like, because it's campist. And that's kind of my educated guess on what's going on here with this criticism. This is a campist criticism, right? And the other thing is, well, like, do we judge the merits of an uprising, of what side we're going to support, or whether we support an uprising based on whether it goes to hell or not, whether it basically there's a lot of bloodshed and destruction and violence that comes out of a result of it? And I think if you're afraid to get your hands dirty, then you need to crawl under your bed and stop political work. Because, like, I mean, you cannot, like, support any uprising or revolution. Like, of course, nobody wants violence or anything like that, but it's like, look at history, like the French Revolution. Most people think, yeah, that was a huge progressive step for humanity. It was bloody as hell. There was practically an assembly line to cutting off the heads of all the counter-revolutionaries in the entire monarchy.
Yeah. But I don't think, obviously times change and society progresses. I don't think, we're talking about mass assembly line of cutting people's heads off.
Well, no, because you shoot them now.
Yeah. Okay.
It's easier.
Easier, okay.
You don't need to build a guillotine. Like, you
Maybe
know,
just, or a circular saw
yeah,
with like an assembly line.
yeah. I mean, like, look at the Russian Revolution. It's like most comrades would agree that that was immensely progressive. But if you're gonna look at it from like a, well, was it destructive to society standpoint? Did it kill like millions of people? Did millions of peasants starve as a result? Sure. Yeah, of course. Like, and so are we gonna say it wasn't successful because of that?
Yeah.
You know? It's like, sure, it went to hell. Like, it was a total flustercluck. But like, I don't think that that is like basically whether or not there's violence, if that's gonna be like, are we gonna support it, yay or nay? Yeah, it sucks. It would be nice if there was a lot less violence, but that's the nature of radical change in society, in human society, when you have a class divided system,
that. I mean,
right?
that was like one of the big points of a little while back when I was trying to talk to Ben about or anybody else for that matter, about Mao in China.
You mean Ben Seattle? I'm just, for anybody that's watching.
Whole this whole myth that he killed a whole bunch of his people. I mean, there were famines happening all the time, and like if they didn't industrialize, it would have happened. The same amount of deaths would have happened. And then they did this study afterwards, like an academic study by like outside groups, that showed that like there was actually no favoritism when the reliefs came. So it wasn't like an intentional screw you to his people that didn't support him and stuff,
Right.
Anyways, I don't know where I go with this now.
Yeah, I mean, so anyway, so this, like, I mean, I don't quote Mao that often, but I know there's quite a few interesting Mao quotes out there, and one of them is, which I agree with, is revolution is not a tea party.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of similar quotes out there, and it's like, I know Lenin had plenty that, revolution is not going to be like this pure thing, which is a trait of left communism, which Lenin criticized. And so I see this as, hey, it wasn't a tea party, and so like we can't support anybody that was involved in that uprising. We can't call it a revolution. It's like, yeah. I mean,
mistakes are going to be made. Things are going to get bloodied. It's truth.
A revolution is a scary thing. Like, let's be honest. Like, it's a very scary and chaotic human event.
Yeah.
All
right.
So the other thing is I saw on Facebook someone named Marco. I forgot his last name, but we'll just call him Marco. He said that this group is a Stalinist group. Now, that is a frequent accusation made by trots against other trots, is that they're Stalinists, and it's basically a frequent slander by trots against anybody, that they're Stalinist. I personally, I try to avoid the term Stalinist. I mean, I think that there are some merits, but with the basically this frequency of use as a slander, it's not a helpful term to be throwing around, especially like when you have criticisms of something.
Yeah, when we're trying to unite it.
Yeah, and so this group in particular is, I would say, it is not a Stalinist group. And what I mean by that is it's very much a Trotskyist group. It has a bunch of number 4s all over it, which is emblematic of the Fourth International, which is, that's basically Trotskyism. And if you look at the very bottom of this article, it really reads just like your typical Trotskyist article. Like,
because there's 10 demands.
Yeah, it's got the 10 demands at the very. It gives you a freaking. It gives you an article, right? And 90% of it is a history lesson, right?
Yeah.
On how we view history, and that's how Trots like to write their articles. They do 90% history, with maybe 10% of other stuff, like whether it's criticism or our ideas on things, or whatever. And then, following by a list of demands, right? Or a list of like points. Yeah. And so the points here, or demands that it says of the working class of Myanmar and the world, which I don't understand why Trots are putting demands onto the working class, like as if like they're a hostage taker and like give us our demands or else. Because Andrew, we're both like construction workers. Like, would workers really care about that? I don't think so. No. But it says overthrow Myanmar's military, a tool of capitalism and imperialism. Take the lead in a general strike in an armed struggle. Win political rights such as rallies, expressions, thoughts, freedom of association. Release all imprisoned political prisoners, including Aung San Suu Kyi, and which I know I butchered. Destroy political fantasies about so-called democratic forces, which is just another card of Myanmar's tyranny. Win communism and minority political freedom. Support independence of minority. Only the establishment of workers' power can break the imperialist chain. Long live socialist revolution, and build a revolutionary party based on Trotsky's program of permanent revolution. Okay.
Right then.
So like, I think it sounds funny to say these are the demands on the working class of Myanmar and the world, to overthrow the Myanmar military and release all the political prisoners, and it's like, do this, and it's like, I'm pretty sure like a lot of workers in Myanmar have a better understanding of what they need to do and how to do it better than this Trot group.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not like, oh, we totally forgot
about that. Oh yeah, the military shooting at us.
Permanent revolution. We totally forgot about that. That's what's we fucked up all this time.
All right, so
okay.
As always, we welcome any comments, criticisms. We got the Reddit link right there. Feel free to check it out. Moving on.
The Amazon workers.
Well, it's a specific Amazon worker.
Yeah.
So basically, this group, Permanent Revolution, which is another Trotskyist group, is accusing another Trotskyist group called Socialist Equality Party of basically expelling one of their members, who happened to be an Amazon worker, whose name is Shuvu Bada, after he was spreading a criticism, like in a form of a leaflet or something, or an article, with other SCP members. So this is like, so there's this Trot group. There's something that happened. I can't remember what the criticism was about. I think it was in the, okay, so it looks like it was in the approach to trade unions. So the SEP has a lot of like anti-trade union articles, especially, some about the trade union bureaucracy, but there's a lot of distrust of like unions in general with the SEP, I noticed. And so so there was a criticism of their overly critical attitude toward the trade unions, and then one of their members shared it, and then after that person shared it, they were kicked out, and so that person went on like NPR or something like that, National Public Radio, which is, that's basically, I would say that's as close you're going to get to state radio in the United States as you can. And he gets on like NPR as an, interviewing an Amazon worker for something. And then the SCP put out the SCP leadership, I think, put out this big letter to all their members about how this guy's a douchebag for getting on the radio and not denouncing the union leadership or denouncing the unions or promoting socialism. And so, yeah, so that's what this is all about. And this is, this is kind of like typical. This is kind of typical drama, I think, that we find in the community. And
so yeah, is this just drama, or is there something good that's coming out of this?
Well,
in your opinion.
Well, I really hate to say something like there's something good coming out of this. This is definitely drama. Yeah. I guess if there's anything good, it exposes that the SCP has like a bunch of douchebags running it. That
going on national radio, do you think that was the right step, or do you think this should have been handled? Hey, well, look, we got to talk about this. Even though there's a big problem, we need to talk about this within our members and stuff like that. I don't think
that guy's interview on the radio was important or significant in any way.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, he could have denounced the capitalist class on the radio, and he could have said, we need a communist revolution on the radio. What good is that going to do, really? He could have denounced the trade union leadership, but the problem is the Amazon workers don't even have a trade union that represents them. There's no trade union leadership for Amazon workers. Yeah, the trade union leaders have been talking about organizing them, but if you don't have any trade union leaders, then what's the point of criticizing them?
Yeah,
they're all non-union. And if the trade union leaders are talking about organizing you, to me it sounds kind of silly to start talking crap about the trade union leaders for actually wanting to do the right thing.
Well, I guess then, so what's the point here? Is there a point here? Is there a takeaway point on why we're talking about this?
Well, yeah, because this is like what the Trots are wanting to talk about, and so, because these are Trot groups, right? And so, now, my takeaway from this is that the priorities within the community are just totally mixed up, and it's like we continue to talk about the SCP like it's some kind of revolutionary group or something, or that it's going to really make a difference. And from what I'm seeing here is it's not, and it's irrelevant, and that they're, it's like, really, of all the things they can do, they want to like make a big stink over in a member that they kicked out for spreading a leaflet. Like, it's like a bunch of unnecessary drama that like, how does this help the working class? How does this help build a revolutionary organization? And then they want to quote Lenin out of context about the freedom to criticize from what is to be done. Like, like, this doesn't help anybody. And
I know it's one of your pet peeves.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on. So Yesterday was May Day. You know, I think there's usual assemblage of marches and that kind of thing around the world, and I don't want to downplay it, but you know, I've just, you know, it's every year, and I've seen a few of them.
Did you see yesterday's or?
I did not see yesterday's.
Okay.
I actually tried to tune in, and of all the years of May Day actions, I think yesterday was kind of the most difficult to kind of get a grasp on what's going on, because, and I'm assuming it's because of COVID, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm not trying to, you know, I'm not really too frustrated. I kind of expected it, but anyway, a number of groups did put out statements, and Communist Voice generally puts out decent statements, like little leaflets, and they usually distribute it on May Day. And so this is Communist Voice's statement / Detroit Workers Voice / Seattle Workers Voice. And it's the same group. And so generally they put out pretty, you know, halfway decent statements, like little leaflets, and it's designed for a mass audience. So basically, so they could pass it out to whoever grabs it. And it's just kind of a summary of what's been going on for the last couple years in the United States. They mentioned Myanmar and the Myanmar dictatorship, and I thought it wasn't too bad. I mean, I don't really have any problems with the leaflet. I think it was pretty good. They mentioned that Biden seems to be signaling a change away from the neoliberal policies for the last 40 years. I think that was a pretty mature observation to make. But that's, yeah, I mean, I didn't think this was too bad. I mean, I think if you're in a group or by yourself and you want to learn how to write a statement, like a leaflet for like a march or a protest, I mean, I think this is probably a pretty good example to look at, you know. And CVO generally does this kind of thing rather well. So that's all I have to say about that. I mean, was there anything you wanted to say about it, Andrew?
Well, yeah, I just was going to agree, and I like the structure. And at the end, because I've said this numerous times, they make these statements, but they never tell you how to get a hold of them or anything like that. Like so it's right there at the end, and I like that. So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. It's good.
Do you think that they should have put like an additional 10 demands on the working class at the end of it?
Well, that might, yeah, that maybe, but like in bullet form, in like 40
points, yeah.
40 size font in red. They need to out-trot.
Wait, I gotta point out, this is not a trot group. This is these guys actually, their roots are in the
it would have been funny, you know, it would have been funny if they put something out on April Fool's Day, something like that.
Yeah, I'll have to think about it. I'll have to think of a way to write an April Fool's.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Louis Proyect, he posted this rather long PDF called Ernie Tate article PDF, and it basically says Canadian trade unionists paid tribute to Ernie Tate's leadership. And so Ernie Tate was he was the basically a trade union leader, a lower level trade union leader. So he was like on the e-board and vice president of a local, it was local 1 for CUPE. And basically the local had about, I'd say like, 500 blue collars and 450 white collars. So around, represent around 900 to 1,000 workers. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, according to the article, he was. I mean, it says he was a Marxist, and I don't know. I'm not going to debate that. Like, and then it basically says like a lot of the trade union work that he's done, and then there's a lot of different statements by different workers who knew him about him, and I mean, it seems like he did a lot of work and he impacted a lot of people, and he basically engaged in a lot of basically a lot of typical trade union work.
Yeah.
Did
I
you know about him, or?
I didn't know about him. I mean, I hadn't heard of him. So, but I mean, I was reading through it, and it's good to know and stuff. I mean, the CUPE is I think it's the largest in Canada. My dad was part of it, and he was the pensions administrator for the Alberta, CUPE.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I hadn't heard of him.
What is a CUP for anybody that doesn't know? Because
the Canadian Union Provincial Employees.
Okay. So, what do they do exactly? Like, because I know I read some stuff on hydroelectric dams and stuff.
Is all like teachers, nurses.
Okay.
All the healthcare workers, like government employees and stuff like that. It's big because we have a big, public sector here.
So it's probably similar to like the SCIU in the United States.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. Kind of sorry to read that obituary. I mean, it's good that he did a lot of work.
Sorry, that's Canadian Union of Public Employees.
Okay.
I'm just a provincial employee. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. So what were you saying?
Yeah. Anyway, I thought it was pretty interesting. He did a lot of good work. A lot of trade union work. And he definitely seemed to have made an impact. But I mean, I think that's pretty much all I have to say on it.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm gonna read a couple of the other things down below, but I just read the headliner and stuff before, so.
Okay.
But yeah, it's good.
So John Ryman, well, we both know that he's been talking about Trump for like the whole year and a half or 4 years.
Yeah.
And so of course he has something to say about Trump and in the shadow of Trump. And so now Trump is out of office now, for those who aren't in the country who've been sleeping under a rock, like,
who are and is not returning anytime soon for those QAnon.
Right. Yeah. And Biden is the new president. And so, John Ryman gives some of his thoughts on, I think this is written after the Biden speech, the 29th. So Biden had his new State of the Union address, or his first one. And I think it was his first one for like the first 100 days in office, whatever. And so, basically, John Ryman gives some of his thoughts. He basically says, hey, look, all that right-wing stuff from Trump, it hasn't like disappeared. It hasn't gone away. It hasn't been destroyed. It's still lurking. It's still there in American society and U.S. society. And Biden has been pushing for more welfare and more reforms to basically calm things down. But like all these issues are still kind of like, they're still simmering basically. They haven't bubbled over yet. But like there's the issue of like the police. There's the issue of these militias and fanatics, and they're still there. Like, they haven't gone away, you know. And so, you know, so basically there's still things to be concerned about, basically. And John says, hey, look, there needs to be a working class movement and a socialist movement, and there needs to be the building of a mass working class political party. And it's like, yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, there needs to, you know, we do need rank and file opposition in the unions. We do need the unions to get involved in protests. And, you know, there does need to be a mass working class movement to rein in the cops. But, you know, it's like, okay, so how do we build that again? You know, like who's gonna build that? Like, are we gonna rely on spontaneity to build that? And that's kind of like, in my opinion, that's like the weakness of the article. I mean, it's good to point out these problems. These problems aren't going away. Sure, there's radicals and militias and stuff, like, and that hasn't gone away now that Trump's gone. And yeah, it could be worse later down the road. But I mean, me personally, I've kind of, I don't know if you probably noticed, I've tried to take a step back from these kind of like general calls for a working class party without like a roadmap. Or steps.
I've definitely noticed, because I mean, we talked about it.
I can say it till I'm blue in the face. That doesn't make the party freaking manifest, right? I mean,
So, I mean, so what do you think? I mean, what's next for John then?
I don't know. I'm glad that he is now seeing something that I told him years ago when Bernie Sanders ran. I remember talking to John Ryman on the phone, and I told him, you know, we're talking about Sanders, I think. And I said, hey, like, I think there's a strong possibility that Sanders, he could be basically, he could win, or the Democrats will basically lean toward him, basically, you know, that either way is basically going to be a win for him. And that we're going to see policy changes towards social democracy, in order to basically calm people down because of the great divide between the wealthy and the poor in the United States. You know, like the 1%, the 99%, like in Occupy, like there's going to be that contradiction's grown wider since then. And so there's a strong possibility for reforms to take place, whether Sanders is going to be elected or not. I was like, oh, I'm not too sure, but I mean, I think there's a strong possibility for that, or for the ruling class to basically lean in that direction. And John basically said there's no freaking way. And so I'm glad, even though he hasn't like admitted to me that he was, you know, that I was right. I'm glad that that he's, you know, now that it's in his face, I'm glad that he can see that what's going on.
Do you think that's played a role in his decision to maybe run for mayor or city council?
I haven't heard anything about his mayoral run.
Well, he said he was thinking about it.
Yeah, he thought about it for like a week or something.
Okay.
Well, that's why when he wrote that article, I asked him, and I think I asked him on the phone too. I asked him if he was, maybe I didn't ask him on the phone, but I know I asked him, like, are you serious? Because because I know people write stuff like that and they're not very serious about it, right? Like it's like flirting with the idea, and I haven't heard anything since then.
All right.
So, so yeah, because I saw it as kind of like a desperate attempt for attention. You know, like, are you serious? Is it just you're just trying to write a good article for your blog? I mean, that's, you know, there's. I mean, I don't mean to sound dismissive, but I was a little bit, I was a little bit of a skeptic.
All right, let's leave it at that and let's see what John has to say.
Okay, so Lausan has a 2-part article talking about Hong Kong and what they call confronting the big platform in Hong Kong, in the Hong Kong movement, and basically kind of some of the shift toward the right, in the movement. I think this is an article. It's an article worth taking a look at, and it kind of goes. It's a 2-part article, and it also kind of goes over this other article they have called, if I can find it real quick. Maybe I can't. Oh, here it is. Facing down Hong Kong movement's right-wing turn. So, so basically, 2 years ago, pretty much when we started the show, this movement in Hong Kong was going on, right, Andrew? And it had to do with the extradition laws being changed so that you could more easily extradite Hong Kongers into China for prosecution. And this created a massive backlash and a movement which grew, and which had like hundreds of thousands of protesters in the streets. Like there were some protests with like estimated at like 2 million people. And whether or not it was 2 million or 1 million, it was a lot. Like it was a lot. And this is a city with what, 7 million or something? How many people are in Hong Kong, Andrew?
I think that's about accurate. Hong Kong Island proper.
Yeah.
I think that's accurate. Let me see here. Yeah, 7 million.
Okay. Yeah. So like there's estimates that a third or a quarter of the population were marching in the streets and participating directly in the protests. Which I think is pretty big. I mean, that's a lot more than any place in the United States. You know?
Yeah.
And so this article mentions it talks about this role or this principle in the movement that was widely accepted and adopted, called the no big platform principle, which I think came out of the umbrella movement. And the idea was that no single leader can represent the movement. And this is piggybacking off of the Occupy movement and the Squares movements. And it's like, and I think that, I mean, I'm kind of guesstimating here that this developed because they didn't want scummy politicians to jump up on a stage and then use it as a bully pulpit for their next election, and for scummy opportunists to do this. And so and that's kind of how I understand, because there's a very similar principle in the Occupy movement, right? Where, we're all leaders. It's a leaderless movement, blah, blah, blah. And then later this kind of went into, we're going to we need to accept a diversity of tactics We need to basically let everybody, have their own tactical decisions, and respect everybody's, decision to use different tactics in the movement, and keep the nature of tactics and strategy decentralized. And that's, as I understand it, it went from that, like in Europe and the United States, and I think it was also in the Middle East with the Arab Spring, and then eventually, that translated into the Hong Konger movement and the Umbrella movement, and then now into the, I don't know what they're calling it now, the anti-extradition movement. And so so because of this, right, like a bunch of different political trends got involved, and political ideologies got involved, because no single trend, no single ideology was right. Like everybody has a place a seat at the table, basically, from the far left to the far right. But the problem, as I see it, and it's kind of pointed out in the article, is the far left was already very marginalized in Hong Kong. And so what did that mean? That meant that the biggest seats in the table were occupied by bourgeois ideology and bourgeois trends, and some of them very basically far right and heavily influenced by big money, like what's his name, who has the Apple newspaper. I think it's Jimmy Lai.
Yeah.
And so this principle opened the door to them. And it became a reactionary principle, basically. And then whenever there was criticism against the far right or against basically people doing stupid things, this principle of no big platform and basically came out, like diversity of tactics, guys. Like some of us want to throw Molotovs at the police, and so that would come out, and it's like, and if you're against that, then you weren't being comradely. You weren't really supporting the movement. And so this creates problems. And so that's kind of how I see as the central point of this whole article.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah, I mean, so, I mean, what's the conclusion here then? I mean, that's kind of what I got from it, but I mean, what's the what do you see the direction of this movement taking then? If it's being, if the left is marginalized and the right is overwhelmingly taking it over, why then does the left need to support it? Just to play devil's advocate here for a second.
Well, in my opinion, the movement is more complicated than just like, oh, it's a bunch of Trumper wannabes, or it's a bunch of anarchists. It's very movements all over the place, all over the world, often have different competing ideologies, bourgeois ideologies, proletarian ideologies, petty bourgeois ideologies, because they're not homogenous, right? They're often complex. They have a lot of different factions involved, and that's how I saw what was going on in Libya, in Syria, Hong Kong. It's how I see what's going on in Myanmar. Like these aren't homogenous movements, it's like It's a shitstorm. And if the far right has gained a lot of traction in the movement, to me, that illustrates the failure of the left. You know, it's like it's our job to promote the left. It's not the far right's job. It's not the, you know, you can't expect the freaking the opportunists within the movement to promote the left or to promote Marxism or to promote revolutionary ideas. That's up to Marxists to do that, you know. And so looking back at Hong Kong, which already had a pretty weak left, as I remember it, a huge section of the left wanted nothing to do with it. They were afraid to get their hands dirty. You know, they said, oh, it's a reactionary movement. Oh, they got American flags. We don't want nothing to do with it. Oh, they're waving British colonial flags, Union Jacks. Oh, they, you know, they all support Trump. And because they wanted nothing to do with it, the left lost a lot of influence, and that pushed things even further to the right.
Yeah.
They, instead of confronting the movement, you know, and saying which direction it needs to go, because right off the bat, as I remember it, there are many, especially within the Marxist community, basically supported China crushing the movement from the get-go. You know,
Yeah.
basically, which pushed the movement right into the arms of the Trumpists and the racists and the nationalists, you know. And so to me, that was the big issue. To reverse that, you have to support the left. You know, you have to support a left influence within the movement.
Yeah.
And you have to basically be willing to get your hands dirty and to get involved in it. Like, I advocate participation, and not non-participation, not alienation. So I think that was the big problem with Hong Kong, with Syria, even with Libya. I don't blame like Libyans or Syrians for things going sideways, because yeah, things are going to go sideways. For one, there's a high chance it's going to go sideways regardless when you have that kind of situation. And then for two, it's like you can't, the workers, the working class, the masses in general, and most of society is reactionary.
Yeah, I'd say that.
You know, I mean, I'm not blaming like the working class or anything. I mean, I'm just saying this is just how it is. And the reason is because because bourgeois ideology is the dominant ideology in society. So of course, reactionary ideology is the dominant force.
Yeah. Okay, so do you have any final thoughts, or do we have a calendar on this, or do you want to see what's on the calendar?
There's nothing really for the calendar. I know I think Socialist Workers Party Britain has some things going on. You'd have to check with them if anybody's interested. I'm not really too interested in it. But they do have some stuff going on for May, and it's Socialist Workers Party Great Britain, so you'd have to take their times and then translate it into your time zone, because they haven't done the courtesy of doing that, making it. They've never reached out to us either, so
yeah, our feelings are hurt, guys. Come on.
Yeah, I think Michael Roberts might be even participating in the SWP stuff, but yeah, that's pretty much what I got. As always, if there's any comments or questions, you know, feel free to put it in the comments. the comment section. Give us a like or subscribe. Hit the bell notifications so that way you can see when we're on. And I know we appreciate everybody watching and checking us out. There's also the Reddit page. If you have an article, if you feel like we missed something, we missed your group, if we got something wrong, you know, you can always feel free to post onto Reddit and even write a rant, you know. And even if we don't have enough time, I'm sure we'll, you know, to get to it, I'm pretty sure one of us is going to read it.
Indeed. Thank you for watching, and see you same time next week.
Yep.